Bruchim Habayim, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bet Gavriel Community Center, where tonight Chazaq is honored to host world-renowned lecturer and author Rabbi YY Rubenstein. Before we begin with tonight's event, just a few quick and important announcements regarding upcoming Chazaq events and programs. First off, every night over here for the men, there's a men's learning program at 8:30 to 10 p.m. The Bet Gavriel Men's Learning Program, classes in English, Hebrew, and Russian. We encourage all men to join. Very powerful, inspirational program. Special classes on a consistent basis by various different community rabbis. We encourage all ladies to send your husbands, your sons, your brothers, etc. to this amazing learning program. If you can't make it at nights, or if you want to join our morning learning program, we're involved with Agra de Pirka, which is in Kew Garden Hills by Rabbi Olbaum Shul, 9:30 a.m. till 11:30 a.m. Classes with Rabbi Ilamer, Rabbi Savitsky, Rabbi Olbaum, many other Rabbanim are there, so you can definitely join that men's learning program in the mornings. Regarding upcoming Chazaq events, this Thursday night, Chazaq presents Rabbi Yosef Chaim Schwab, who is the son of Rabbi Shimon Schwab, very big tzaddik. From Muncie. He's going to be at Rabbi Olbaum Shul in Kew Garden Hills. The topic is getting ready for Elul. The month of Elul is upon us, coming very soon, so that will definitely get us ready for that. Thursday night, August 13th, refreshments served at 8:15 p.m., lecture scheduled for 8:30 p.m. So please bear along with me. There's going to be quite a few events. Many of the tables have these newsletters that have the flyers on. I'm just going to go through them quickly. A week from tonight, Chazaq will be joining up with Shalom Workshop for an all-day workshop for couples. The couples have to be 7 years or less married. There's going to be Rabbi Yaakov Horowitz and many other rabbis and presenters at this event. It starts at 9:30 a.m. all the way to 3:30 p.m., including breakfast and lunch. It's absolutely all free of charge. So we encourage everyone to join that event as well. That same day, Chazaq's Teens Division will be having a Hoop It Up 3-on-3 basketball tournament for our boys Teens Division. We're renting out the entire Russell Stage Park. So if you have any teenagers ages 14 to 17, they could definitely join this amazing event. And we encourage the kids that join our basketball game over here to obviously join us throughout the year for our different learning sessions. Thursday night, August 20th, Chazaq presents Rabbi Yinon Kalazan, who is a world-renowned lecturer for Arachim. That's going to be at Congregation Bet Eliyahu in Fresh Meadows. Then in 2 weeks from tonight, Rabbi Pesach Crone Live at the Young Israel Jamaica Estates. That's August 23rd, another special Chazaq event. And two more announcements is that Chazaq will be having another suit sale, this time pre-Rosh Hashanah, to benefit Chazaq's various different programs. That will be August 29th and 30th, Saturday night and Sunday, and September 5th and September 6th, Saturday nights and Sunday, 2 weeks. You'll see the flyers all around, you'll get the emails, you'll get the text messages, etc. But please come and encourage others to come as well. I actually got quite a few suits, and our last suit sale was very, very good. The last announcements regarding events is our main fundraising event of the year. That's our annual dinner. Save the date and don't miss out. Wednesday night, September 9th. The terrace on the park this year is a new location that we're going to be having it at. Our Rabbinic Leadership Awardee is Rabbi Yitzchak Olbaum. Youth Leadership Awardee is Simcha Mushev and his wife from Bet Gavriel over here. Hakara Satov is Mr. and Mrs. Moshe Stayev. Community Service Award is Mr. and Mrs. Manny Bahar. Keter Torah Award is Mr. and Mrs. Alicia Hissinger. And Pillar of Chesed Award goes to Mr. and Mrs. Robert Gergov of Sushi Fusion. So these are 6 community leaders that have helped Chazaq throughout the years, and they definitely deserve this honor. And it's not just about the honorees, it's also about the organization. If anyone has benefited any way, whether it's the lectures or the magazine or the radio or the Teens Division or the Parsha papers or the CD distribution or the Torah libraries or the other dozen other programs, please come and show your support, spread the word, let others know as well. If for whatever reason you can't make it on September 9th, we will be having our annual dinner journal that you could definitely be a part of. Write a thank you, write a letter to any of the Rabbanim that you've been inspired by, etc., etc., etc. So with that being said, I think you heard enough from me. At this time we're going to have the honor to hear from a special guest speaker, Rabbi YY Rubenstein on the topic of laughter. Without further ado, let's give a nice loud round of applause to Rabbi YY Rubenstein.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So basically, I thought it might be interesting tonight to talk on the subject, not just about laughter, how laughter gets us through tough times. Put your hand up here if you've never had any tough times in your life. Gorgeous. Right, how old are you? 9? 9? Keep it up, keep it up, keep it going. Okay. So if you've never had any tough times, really, I suppose this lecture really it's not for you. But laughter, as you will see, laughter is by far the most important gift that Hashem could possibly give us, well, any time, and particularly to get us through tough times. Have you ever considered what it is that makes you laugh? You ever thought about that? What is it that makes you laugh? There's a famous British comedian, and I always forget this guy's name, but you may know him as Mr. Bean. Are you familiar with this guy? His name is Rowan Atkinson. Rowan Atkinson. And like most funny people that I know, he's not just funny, he's actually highly intelligent. And he lectures at Oxford and Cambridge universities. Incidentally, you getting the accent? You understanding a word I'm saying? Yes. Because I can talk like this if it makes it easier for you. Okay? Are you okay? Fine. So the thing that he says, and he lectures at Oxford and Cambridge, and he says there are 4 things that makes us laugh. The first thing that makes us laugh, he said, is the old person slipping on a banana peel joke. Why we laugh at that, I don't know. After all, if you're the person falling in the banana peel, you don't find it even remotely funny. The second thing he says that makes us laugh is what's called incongruity. If something is incongruous, what does incongruous mean?
Out of place.
Out of place, yeah. I was going to ask my buddy of 9, but okay, you beat him to it. Right, if something's out of place, I once Googled this. I looked for the word incongruity, and if I could show you, sort of like on the screen, you'd get it. Imagine a row of dogs. There was 10 dogs standing in front of a camera, sitting in front of the camera, sort of posing for the camera. How dogs pose for a camera, I don't know, but it's sort of like the same thing. 5 dogs on one side, all sorts of different types of dogs. Poodles and German shepherds and stuff. And another 5 on the other side, and sitting in the middle, looking at the camera, was a cat. And it looks so funny, it looks so strange, it just made you laugh. But the thing that generally makes us laugh, by far, is the unexpected. Isn't that what makes us laugh? What's the part of a joke? What do we call the part of a joke that you laugh at? It's called what?
Punchline.
The punchline. You don't see it coming, poof, it hits you. I've got to tell you, this has happened to me just a few days ago. There is, at the moment, I'm living in a place called Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Which, yay. Who said, you said, yeah, oh, it's a wonderful place. And I want to thank Chazaq very, very much for, incidentally, I should have said at the beginning, for inviting me, because any time I can spend out of Brooklyn is really a great time. Anyway, so there is a lady in our neighborhood who's got a lovely, sweet daughter. She is about 23 years of age, 24, something like that. I know she's looking to meet somebody, settle down and get married. And so I phoned up, or got my wife to phone up and ask the mother for her resume, her shidduch resume, which promptly arrived. And I looked at the resume, and it didn't really help me very much, because it said what school the girl went to, her qualifications, etc., her height, her favorite everything, but not what she was looking for in life, and not what she was looking for in somebody to share her life. So I phoned up the mother, and I said, Mrs., let's call her Cohen. Mrs. Cohen, I said, it's Rabbi Rubenstein. I got the resume, but it doesn't tell me what your daughter's looking for. What is she looking for in a boy? What mistake have I now made? I've asked the mother what she's looking for in a boy for her daughter. And the answer is the Mashiach, right? She's looking for total and absolute perfection. He's got to be in learning for a couple of years, but after that he's got to be a banker. And then he's got to be incredibly handsome, and he's got to be incredibly intelligent, incredibly funny. He's got to be totally devoted to Torah and Yiddishkeit. On the other hand, he's got to know all about this world. And on it went, I thought, oi, oi, oi. And then I said, and Is there anywhere particular she wants to settle? Does she mind where she settles, where she lives? My mother paused. No, I don't think she cares where she lives. She'll live anywhere, but not outside New York. Wow! Anywhere is inside New York. Anything outside New York is nowhere. Right? It was so funny. I just didn't expect it anywhere, but not outside New York. And when you hear something that you don't expect, generally that's what makes us laugh. Anybody here from Switzerland? Good. I remember I was once invited, in fact my first time ever invited to speak in Switzerland. I was particularly keen to accept the invitation because I heard that the Swiss do mountains. And I'm Scottish. I like mountains. And I wanted to hear what these second-class Swiss mountains look like. So I accepted the invitation, and then a week later I got a message from somebody that the people in Zurich, it's German Switzerland, in Zurich were interested in hearing some of my shiurim. And I thought, that's a bit upside down. You find out whether the guy can speak before you invite him, and he's accepted the invitation, not afterwards. But I thought perhaps they just wanted to see the cultural differences. So I sent 2 tapes. One was a video. Do you remember videotapes? Remember videotapes? You know, those big things. You wind them up. Videotapes of me speaking to my university students, because I used to be the rabbi to 14 universities in the northwest of England. And of course, when you're speaking to university students on campus, particularly if they're not from, it's you're a bit more relaxed. You know what I'm talking about. You make it really cool. And so I sent off this shear. At the same time, I sent an audio cassette. Remember those little things? Of me giving a serious shear, because I can do that as well. And so these 2 shear went to Zurich. And then a week later, I got a phone call from somebody who said, "Hello, is this Rabbi Rubenstein?" In this German accent. And I said, "Yes, this is Rabbi Rubenstein." He said, "Rabbi Rubenstein, this is Mark phoning from Zurich." I said, "Hello, Mark." He said, "Hello, Rabbi Rubenstein." He said, "It's about the video you sent." I said, "Yes. We liked it very much. But when you come to Zurich, no humor, please. No humor." And then he said, "Und," there was an "und." And you mustn't become friendly with the students. Because a German rabbi is aloof, right? Und, there was another "und." And the next "und" was, "and no Yiddish," right? Now, I learned in yeshiva in Gateshead for 10 years in Yiddish, so sometimes Yiddish pops out, even if I don't mean it to. But to a German ear, Yiddish sounds a bit like somebody saying, "Oh, it's wonderful to be in your country. Where do I get the taxis to drive?" That sort of thing. And sounds a bit funny. So, no Yiddish. And that's a problem for me. It's a problem because I have a sense of humor. I'm not an aloof sort of rabbi. You probably got that already. And Yiddish sometimes pops out. How did I get through the 3 days of the weekend? It's for university students. Incidentally, the university students arrived for my lectures wearing suits. Armani suits. University students in suits! I knew my university students looked as though they fell out a garbage can, right? But these people, suits, and they're sitting taking notes. Wow! Anyway, so how did I get through this? Did anybody here, have you ever heard of Star Trek? Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this. But do you remember Mr. Spock? I'm talking Star Trek when Vulcans were Jewish. Yeah? And so I pretended, without telling anybody, I was Mr. Spock over the weekend, like this. Logic, right. On Sunday night, I was invited to speak to the ladies of Zurich. And they have an organization called the Agudas Fraugruppen. So I walked into the hall, which was twice the size of this hall. And there was all these ladies sitting there. In the front rows were all the grandmothers and great-grandmothers sitting like this. And I took my bunch of books and I put them down. And then they'd asked me to speak in Yiddish. And then it occurred to me I'd forgotten to ask how long I should speak for. So I said to them in Yiddish, "Entschuldig mir, excuse me, wie lang muss ich etwas reden? How long should I speak for?" And somebody from the back of the hall shouted out in English with an American accent, "That depends." Which I thought was very funny. In other words, if you're good, you can speak all night. If you're garbage, 2 minutes and go away, right? And they all started to laugh. They were laughing. I'd spent 3 days training myself. These people don't know how to laugh, and suddenly they're laughing. You see, I discovered that most of the women in Zurich, most of the wives, aren't Swiss. They're normal human beings who come from countries like America and Canada and England, with a God sense of humor. Although I'm being very unfair to the Swiss, because they actually do have a sense of humor. It's just very different to yours. Whereas if I say something funny and you find it funny, you go, ha 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 ha. In Switzerland, humor should produce no more than anything more than is considered rude. That's true, absolutely true. And I don't know if you know this, but you know that phrase in English, laughter is the best medicine? Have you heard that phrase?
Yes.
When I wrote a book, my late wife passed away from cancer, and I wrote a book called The Little Book for Big Worries, Dealing with Serious Illness, which I have the chutzpah to tell you you should own. Right? I didn't bring any to sell to you. It's to teach you how to help people who are not well, and how to do it properly, how to deal with doctors, right? And we'll all, at some point, we should at some point be helping some people who are not well. It's a mitzvah, isn't it? So I wrote a book on this subject, and I discovered in the research I did for the book, did you know that people who get serious illnesses like cancer, who can laugh about their circumstances and their situation, do you know they've got a 75% higher recovery rate than people who cannot laugh about their situation? Incredible. So they say laughter is the best medicine. It probably is true. A thought came into my mind, and it sounds very cruel. But I honestly wondered, what is the recovery rate for serious illness in Switzerland? Because if all you can manage is that, you know, whereas if you can laugh, you know, it's different. And incidentally, if you can laugh, it can get you out of some serious situations. A number of years ago in Manchester, in England, where I was living, there's a shul there, a big shul. It's called the Shrubbery Shul. And the Shrubbery Shuls were in between rabbis. They'd let one rabbi go, and they were waiting to appoint a new rabbi. In fact, they wanted me to become the rabbi of the synagogue, thus proving that they certainly had a sense of humor. And I didn't see myself, I never saw myself as the rabbi of a shul. However, they had a problem. They had 6 bar mitzvahs coming up. 6 consecutive bar mitzvahs. And it's a sort of shul, it's an Orthodox shul, but the people ain't necessarily, you know, 100% Shomer Shabbat, etc. It's the sort of shul where if the rabbi's not there to address the bar mitzvah boy, he's not really bar mitzvah. So they needed a rabbi. Would I come and do 6 bar mitzvahs? And I said, yeah, of course. So I turned up on Shabbos morning. The president of the synagogue was waiting to greet me, and he took me to the front of the shul to the rabbi's chair. Now, anybody here ever been in a synagogue in Great Britain? All right, so you'll be able to say this is true. You see, it's just like in America. You've got the Aron HaKodesh, the rabbi's seat either on the right or the left, and the guest rabbi's seat, so there's 2 seats there. They've got that in England as well. It's just that they encase the rabbi's chair in a wooden box, which opens either at the front or at the side. And I never understood this. Why they want to put the rabbis in wooden boxes, I don't know. After all, he's going to be in a wooden box soon enough. Why you're trying to speed up the process, I didn't really understand. So he took me to the front, and they opened the door, and then I went to the wooden box. And another interesting thing to notice is obviously, if you've got a logical mind, the rabbi's box was clearly made for the original rabbi of the synagogue when they built it. Now, the rabbi of this synagogue must have been a midget. Right? I'm telling you, when I sit in this box, I have my knees underneath my chin, like this. There's another synagogue in Manchester. They made the box. The guy must have been a giant. When I give my lecture, it's like this. Hello! So they took me to the front, and I sat in the rabbi's box. And then they took out the Sifrei Torah to go to the Bima and the president said, Rabbi, would you accompany the Sifrei Torah to the Bima? And I said, of course. So I came out my box and I went round saying good Shabbos to everybody, Shabbat Shalom, onto the Bima, back to the box. And then they come up and said, we'd like to give you an Aliyah. What is your Hebrew name? Yehuda Yonah ben Avraham. And so they called me up, out of the box, onto the Bima, back to the box. And then they said to me, would you say the prayer for the state of Israel and the royal family? Now, in England, of course, we don't say the prayer as you do for Barack Obama. We say the prayer for the Queen of England. Let me ask you, who would you prefer as your head of state? Queen of England. Queen of England, okay, fine, okay. I'm just claiming the country back for Great Britain. Anyway, so I said, of course. So I went on to the Bima. Now, you're talking a big show. There's about, I would say, 2,000 people there, 1,000 in the men's. There's a women's gallery upstairs. And this is one of the highlights of the service. And so the Chazan was an old friend of mine called Bertie Sandler, comes from South Africa. So I got onto the Bima and I whispered to him, I said, Bertie, how do you say it? You see, there's different ways to say the prayer for the royal family. Some people say it in English. Some people say it in Hebrew. Some people say it half English and half Hebrew. How do you say it? So I whispered to him, Bertie, how do you say it? He said to me, just read whatever's in the Siddur. I said, yeah, Bertie, but how do you say it? Just read exactly what's in the Siddur. So they announced prayer for the royal family. And I opened the Siddur and I began. He who gives salvation unto kings and dominion unto princes, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. May he bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth. Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The Queen's mother was still alive in those days. Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. The Prince and Princess of Wales. The problem was, she was dead. The Princess of Wales, Lady Diana, had been killed in that tunnel crash in Paris. Do you remember that? Yes. But she was dead. But it wasn't my fault they hadn't taken it out of the Siddur. The guy had said, just reads exactly what's in the Siddur. So I just said the prayer for the dead princess. Well, there was a very interesting reaction. 1,000 people, instead of bursting into laughter, an explosion of laughter, there was an implosion of laughter, which is a very interesting sound. Imagine 2,000 people going, You see, they didn't want to laugh for 3 reasons. 1, they liked me. 2, they knew I'd come to do them a favor. 3, they knew I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, so I smiled at Bertie, who told me, just read what's ever in the Siddur. And I went back into my box. At this point, I'd been quite happy if somebody had nailed it down. And that was that. And then they brought the Sifrei Torah back. The president introduced me. Stupid, everybody knew me anyway. And then I came out to address the bar mitzvah boy. The little boy stood up, and I smiled at him. And I said, before I address today's bar mitzvah boy, I'd just like to point out that for those of you who are listening very carefully to the prayer for the royal family a few seconds ago, you may have noticed a slight change to the wording. At this point, nobody could control themselves, and 2,000 people burst into laughter. And I waited for complete and total silence. And then I said, I'd just like you to know that for some of us, she'll live forever. And at this point, everybody laughed. And I got out of feeling, if you can get yourself a sense of humor, you can get yourself out of some tricky situations. And I remember a number of years ago in Manchester, the doorbell rang, and my late mother-in-law, Eliyahu HaNavi, was standing there at the door, and it was pouring. It rains a lot in Manchester. Pouring, coming down in buckets. She was soaked to the skin. I said, mother-in-law, what are you doing standing there in the rain? You're soaked. Go home. Now, now the reason that you laughed there is because it's the unexpected. You expected me to say, mother-in-law, you're soaked, come in. But then again, you never met my mother-in-law. If it's the unexpected, that's the punchline that always gets us laugh. Here's a story. It's a story from the Gemara, and the Gemara is in Famous story, well-known story in the Gemara in Tanit, and it's on page Kaf Bet, in case you're interested. Listen to this. The Gemara says the following thing. There was a rabbi, and he was called Rabbi Broika, which I think is a very cool name. Rabbi Broika. And it says that Rabbi Broika was always found in a marketplace, a Jewish marketplace in Beit Lefet, a place. And when he was there, he would bump into, every day, Eliyahu HaNavi. Woohoo! That's cool. And one day he said to Eliyahu HaNavi, is anybody in this marketplace going to Olam Haba? Anybody here going to heaven? And Eliyahu HaNavi said, that man over there. What sort of thing do you think the guy did which guarantees him a place in heaven? If I say there's a guy sitting in this room now, could be a lady as well, particularly one of my ex-Talmidos who very kindly come. Suppose I say this girl, this young lady, this man, I guarantee you, I'm a fully qualified rabbi. This person is definitely going to heaven. What sort of thing do you think they did that guarantees them a place in heaven? What do you think? Makes three shidduchim.
Makes people laugh.
Makes people. Wait. What else? Oh, you're all very fruit. I do, you guys, right? 3 shidduchim. Is that right? I've made 55. Yes. I might just go any second. Anyway, so basically, if somebody saves somebody's life, if you save somebody's life, you're definitely going to heaven, yeah? That's definite. And indeed, the fellow was one of these Jews that we sometimes see through Jewish history, particularly through tough times, who is blessed by not having Jewish looks. Blonde hair, blue eyes, doesn't look Jewish. And throughout Jewish history, in times of persecution, people like that were able to help other Jews. He was in charge of a jail. The Romans very commonly, because the Romans controlled the land of Israel, would kidnap a Jew, put him in jail on a trumped-up charge, and wait for his family to turn up with money, a ransom, to get him out. If they did that to a woman, you can all imagine by the time the woman was ransomed, the worst things could have happened to her. He made sure nobody laid a finger. Olam haba. And then Rabbi Broika said to Eliyahu HaNavi, anybody else here going to heaven? He pointed to 2 guys. Said, those 2 guys as well. So he goes over to these 2 guys, and he says, I'll read this bit to you just to prove I'm a fully qualified rabbi. He went over there and he says to these 2 guys, he says, these 2 guys are also going to heaven. Also the Gabayhus. He rushes over to them. He says to them, what do you guys do? Which is what you said. But you're wrong. Everybody gets that bit. So you can all be big Talmidei Chachamim now, right? Now you can show off. Now, don't be upset. I hope I'm not embarrassing you. But everybody says what he said. Indeed, that's what it says there. We are comedians, and we make people laugh. But it then goes on to say the following thing. So listen carefully, because this is the crucial bit. Don't think if you just crack a joke, you're going to heaven. That's wrong. It says the following thing. It says, "V'duki onen matchinan atzivi." We look for people who are depressed, and we make them laugh. It's not just cracking a joke. You find people who are down, who are depressed, who are upset, and then they make them laugh. You can do that, then you go to Olam Haba. What makes people depressed? Have you considered this? Any psychologists in the room? Any doctors? Doctors? Is this a Jewish synagogue? So, if there was any psychologists or doctors here, there are 2 types of depression. There are some people, sadly, who are born with depressive personalities. The brain simply doesn't generate enough of the happy chemical, which is called serotonin, and so they go through life, and it's really tough for them. But Baruch Hashem, with the Chesed of Hashem, there's been great progress in this field, and there are all sorts of drugs that can compensate by artificially introducing serotonin and makes people's lives a lot better. There's another type of depression. It's called reactive depression. Reactive depression. And there are 4 classic triggers that can make a person depressed. Does anybody know what they are? When things are really tough. Well, the first thing is, go on, death. Yeah, death. And not yours, because that's definitely depressing. But if somebody you're close to, somebody you love, whether it is a spouse, as happened to me, or a parent, happened to me as well. Incidentally, we all want our children to be sitting Shiva for us, do we not? Every parent wants their child to be sitting shiva for them. The alternative is not acceptable. But if you lost a sibling, or if you lost a parent, or if you lost a spouse, and God forbid if you lost a child, then that can make you depressed. Anything else? Sickness. You go to the doctor and he says you've got a very serious disease. That can make you depressed. Anything else? What's the other one? Losing a job. Well done. You lose a job, you've no income, and you know, I came here to work for an organization, turned out not to be an organization, supposed to be for 3 years, it lasted only 10 months. And I'd moved continents, and that was tough, and I must admit, I was feeling a bit depressed at one point. Right? What are you going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? Right? You lose your job, that can make you depressed. There is another one last one. Any ideas? Moving. Moving. Now, we're in a community here of people who've moved, right? Bulgarians and Russians, etc. It's tough to move from one place to another. It can trigger depression, okay? These two guys, they find people who are depressed. They've moved there from their homeland, or they're seriously sick, or they've lost somebody, or they've lost their job. Rashi says, what did they do? Baduchi, comedians, samechim and mesamchim b'nei adam. We are jolly, and we make other people jolly too. The other commentator, called Rabbi YY said, they had a verbal dexterity. They had the ability to make people laugh. Here's a rabbi's question. Rabbis always ask trick questions, but this one isn't. What did these two comedians do to change the circumstances of the people they made laugh? The person that lost a child, the person that's lost his job, the person that moved from England to Brooklyn, the person, you know, who's diagnosed with sickness. What did these two guys do to make their circumstances different? Answer? Nothing. Nothing. They'd still lost a child, they still lost a job, still lost their homeland. But how they looked at it, how they saw it exactly so, that changed. Their perspective changed. And as we're in a Sephardi shul, I can't resist telling you what the great Ben Ish Chai has to say. You know, you interested in Kabbalistic Judaism? Yeah. Can I be a bit mystical? Yeah. I will try not to levitate. Okay, so the Ben Ish Chai says the names for Hashem has got 4 letters, doesn't it? Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, 4 letters. Kabbalistic books say that the world, Hashem created the world from the 4 basic elements. What are the 4 basic elements? Fire and water, air and earth. Fine. So the Ben Ish Chai says that the 4 letters of Hashem's name parallel the 4 basic elements of creation. The first Hey in Hashem's name, there are 2, stands for Haaretz. And it's the way of Haaretz, the world, the earth, to pull you down. After all, that's where gravity comes from, isn't it? But this world pulls us down. The second Hey, that stands for Aish. And Aish, and what's the nature of a flame? What does a flame do? Goes up, points towards heaven. And then he just adds 2 words. 2 words! Zu Bina. Zu Bina. Down here you don't get the joke. Down here you don't get it. It just pulls. This is a place that pulls you down. But up there, when you see it from that perspective, then you laugh. Then you laugh. Let me explain what I mean. This story is 4 years old. I'm only able to tell you the story because the person in the story insists that I tell this story, his story. And in actual fact, it's my oldest son. My oldest son has had his own difficult times. And as I said to you at the beginning, has anybody here not had difficult times? Nobody except my young friend said yes. Don't forget, even David HaMelech turned around and said, Keli, Keli, lama uzaftani. My God, why have you deserted me? When you can't see Hashem, when you can't see the punchline, when you don't get the joke, sometimes you feel pretty bad. Anyway, my son's had his own tough times. When he was 14 years of age, he was in a wheelchair for a year. He'd major surgery on his feet. In fact, he's just had more major surgery a few weeks ago. He now lives in Israel. And then his mummy died after 5 years of cancer. And he's had tough times. And he phoned me 3 years ago, and he said, Dad, I didn't want to worry you, but I've just come back from the doctor. They've confirmed the diagnosis. My son, incidentally, is a professional photographer. He works for the great Sephardi Mekubal and Gadol Rabbi Hillel Shlita. The Rabbi Hillel has got thousands of manuscripts, unpublished manuscripts, by people like the Ben Ish Chai. And my son's job is to photograph them, carefully preserve the manuscript so that one day they can be published. And so my son, is a professional photographer, phoned me up and said, "Dad, I didn't want to worry you, but the doctor has just confirmed that I'll be totally blind in 10 years' time." Now I have to tell you, as I said to you before, I've written a book on serious illness. I've had a lot of experience of it personally, and well, I'm a rabbi, so I deal with people and their problems all the time. But when my son told me that he was going to be completely blind in 10 years' time, I really didn't have anything to say. I was literally and totally shocked. Anyway, just after that, he was in Manchester. He was filming a wedding, photographing a wedding. He was scheduled to fly back on the German national airline Lufthansa from Manchester to Frankfurt, and from Frankfurt down to Israel. And at the last minute, the plane was cancelled. So instead, he had to fly on one of these cheap airlines in Europe. It's called Jet 2. Have you ever heard of Jet 2? Good. Keep it that way. Never, ever fly on Jet 2. It's one of the most horrible experiences in human existence. It's absolutely true. The seats, they're not even as comfortable as the seats you're sitting on. The seats are plastic. Plastic seats of an airplane. The cup holder in the seat in front of you has clearly been unscrewed from a coat hanger and stuck there. You put your cup of coffee, it just goes straight down to the floor. So my son, feeling a bit disappointed he wasn't in this cool jet going back to Israel, decided to pay a little bit more money and get an extra legroom seat, and they moved him to the front. So he sat down beside some guy, and the guy said, in a Manchester accent, "Hello." And my son said, "Hello." And my son said, and this guy said to my son, "Do you live in Israel or do you live in Manchester?" My son said, "I live in Israel, but I was brought up in Manchester." "Oh, me too," said the guy. "Where do you live in Israel?" My son said, "Yerushalayim." "Oh, I live in Renana," said the fellow. "Very good." And then the guy said to him, "You said you were brought up in Manchester, you weren't born in Manchester?" "No," said my son, "I was born in a place called Gateshead." Have you heard of Gateshead? Well, you've heard of Lakewood. Right. What Lakewood is to America, Gateshead is to Europe. That's where I studied in Yeshiva. In fact, in Gateshead, we think Lakewood is reform. Okay? I cracked this joke a few months ago in Lakewood. Nobody laughed. Anyway, I thought it was quite good. Anyway, so that's what Gateshead is. And so when he said he was born in Gateshead, this guy said, "Oh, I know Gateshead very well. Because when I studied medicine, I studied at the University of Newcastle upon Tyne. Imagine a horizontal line and call that the River Tyne. North of the River Tyne is the city of Newcastle upon Tyne. South of the River Tyne is the town of Gateshead. There's a difference in England. To be a city, you need to have a cathedral and a university. Gateshead's the largest town in England. Anyway, so it'd be fair to say that Newcastle is an ordinary, average British place. You couldn't say that about Gateshead. Everybody's a rabbi in Gateshead by the age of 3. And so Project Seed came from America. It took root in Gateshead, and I was part of the first program. There was 30 of us from the yeshiva, used to cross the River Tyne every Wednesday night and learn one-to-one with the people in the city of Newcastle, including a university student. Because this fellow said, "I used to learn every week with a very well-known rabbi from Gateshead." He said to my son, "Have you ever heard of Rabbi YY Rubenstein?" And my son said, "Yeah, I've heard of him. That's my father." And so my son, when he was realizing he was going to be spending 5 hours in the plane sitting next to a doctor, well, Scottish and Jewish, free consultation. So he started to tell him all about his problems and all the trouble he's had, and the problem he's had with his legs, and how his mother passed away from breast cancer, and all the other stuff. And then eventually he told him that now, by then, in 9 years' time, he's going to be totally blind. And the doctor turned around and said, well, as a matter of fact, you're wrong. I'm an eye specialist. And we developed a surgical technique that stops this disease in its tracks. They put a solid lens underneath the eye. It stops it changing its shape, which this disease has caused. And this guy said, and I'll do this for you. Now, my wife is a very wise lady, and she says, I've got to be very careful what I say next. I don't want you to think in any way that I have an ego problem. In Hebrew, I'm a Baal Gaiva. In fact, I know few people who deserve less to be a Baal Gaiva than me. However, it would be true to say that I have the enormous zchus, the enormous merit of having taught and spoken to Jews all over the world, and taught Jews all over the world. 6, 7 years ago, I spoke in the 9 days before Tisha B'Av to 5,000 women in Binyani Ha'umah, the big hall in Yerushalayim. They have an annual gathering of ladies there. 5,000. But I've spoken all over the world. That's really what I do for a living. It would be fair, it would be honest to say that I have tens of thousands of Talmidim. And this doctor, is called Dr. Andrew Fink, was the first Talmud I ever had, the first person I ever taught Torah to. And when I was feeling pretty depressed because I'd moved to America and the job that was promised for 3 years disappeared after 10 months, and my son told me he was going blind, and when I felt just like David HaMelech, Kaylee, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forgotten about me? Why have you abandoned me? He hadn't abandoned me. He'd written down all those nights of learning one-to-one with that boy from, I'm embarrassed to tell you, 36 years before. And when I needed to draw on that account, he was there putting my son on the flight to be sitting next to the fellow who was going to save his sight. And when my son told me that the doctor on the plane was Andrew Fink, my former student, and he was going to save his eyesight, how do you think I reacted? I laughed. I cried as well, incidentally. But I laughed. When you get the joke, then you laugh. It's the unexpected. It's when you don't get the joke. Every tell you a joke, everybody else gets it. When I moved to New York, a guy said to me, do you know there's a bridge in Queens called the Kosciuszko Bridge? And I said, oh yeah, I think I've driven across that. He said, do you know why there's a bridge in Queens called the Kosciuszko Bridge? And I said, no. He said, it's named after a famous Polish general. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, you know why there's a bridge in Queens named after a famous Polish general? I said, no. He says, meant to be a tunnel. Right? And everybody started to laugh, right? And I didn't get it because, you see, in England, the stupid people are meant to be the Irish. Right? And I didn't understand that in America it's supposed to be the Poles, which is all nonsense, right? Nobody's really stupid. But anyway, they're all laughing. And you feel stupid when everybody else gets the joke, and you don't get the joke. And these two comedians found people, and they were able to let them see a shemaim, a different perspective. Not the perspective down here, because down here pulls you down. But up there, lifts you up. That's what they did. Look, I've upset a lot of people since I moved to America, particularly in New York, and I might be doing it again now. And I don't mean to upset people, but you hear, particularly at this time of year, New Yorkers talking about the fact that they're going to the mountains. By which they mean, by which you mean, the Catskills. Now, I've got news for you. The Catskills are not mountains. I'm Scottish. I know what mountains look like. The Catskills are hills. In fact, they're not even hills. They are pimples, right? I don't know what you're wearing on your feet just now, male or female, heels or not, flats, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're wearing, that'll do to get you to the top of one of these Catskills. Pimples. But if you want to climb to the top of a Scottish mountain, you better make sure you get proper climbing boots. And if you want to get to the top of a Swiss mountain, oh, you need serious gear. And if you want to get to the top of Mount Everest, then you need a team of supporters to get you there. Did you know that? They've got a special name. Who knows what they're called?
Sherpas.
Oh. Sherpas, I like that name, it sounds like the Yiddish schleppers, which is exactly and precisely what they do. They schlep all the equipment that you need to get you to the top. Do you know how many Sherpas on average it takes to get you to the top? 50. 50 to get you to the top. What happens is they make a base camp, 10 stay behind in the base camp. Then you go up to the next Madrega, next level, and then they make another camp, and then 10 stay behind there, and then 30 go to the next, and so eventually you get to the top. The higher the mountain you have to climb when life gets tough, when sometimes you face big mountains, the more help you're going to need to get to the top of the mountain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did you ever see a film called Fiddler on the Roof?
Yeah.
I must admit, I saw this when I was 9, and my late mother-in-law, Eliyahu Shaloms, when she wasn't wet, I watched it once with my late wife in her home. There's a song on Fiddler on the Roof called "If I Was a Rich Man," doidy 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 doidy, doidy 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 doy. Are you with me in that? Now I can't remember precisely and exactly what the words go like, but there's something that goes along the lines of, and if I was a rich man, people would come and ask my advice all day long. I think what the Jewish people have done particularly well over the last 3,500 years, before giving advice became a multi-trillion-dollar industry with psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, and counselors, and now life coaches, whatever that is, Jews have been particularly good at going to other Jews and asking for help, and because you're Jews, you will always find somebody who will help. So it could even be the case that you have to get to the top of a very large mountain, and maybe you're a little bit depressed because you're facing a big challenge. You lost your job, or you moved to Brooklyn.
Brooklyn's better.
Yeah, it's getting better. Yeah. Which is why I'm leaving. I'm moving to Queens. Anyway, so, but there'll be people out there who can make you see the funny side. And when you see the funny side, the Shemaim perspective, then you get it. Then it's the punchline, and then you laugh. Don't sit on your own when you're facing tough times. Reach out, find out who's good, who's reliable, who's there to help you. You'll always find somebody like that. They'll get you to see the funny side. They'll get you to no longer be depressed. You no longer be pulled down. You start to go up. You're Jewish. There'll be somebody there who'll be able to make you laugh, even through tough times.
Thank you.
Pleasure.